Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm AndyRC and today I'm going to be checking out the iFlight BumbleBee. Previously on the channel I reviewed the Flywheel 138 and I was really impressed with its performance, specifically when it came to acro, which I didn't expect because these guys aren't designed for that. They seem to be really popular though, and like I said in my Flywheel video, I think it's because they can be used to monetize your hobby in a professional way by sticking a Hero 7 or 8 up front and then turn on Hypersmooth to get footage that you can't get with any other type of model. You don't have to use Hypersmooth, but after messing around with these for a while, I think it's the easiest and most reliable way to get good results. You can use a Hero 6 and some software called Real Steady Go, but I've not had much luck with that, although I've heard that GoPro have just acquired Real Steady, so there could be some interesting stuff coming in the future. One thing these models do have in common is that they are all quite expensive for what they do. And while there are some budget-friendly options coming along, such as the Reptile Cloud, most of the action cameras needed to get good results from these type of models cost more than the price of the latest analog version of the BumbleBee. So I wonder what the budget versions are aimed at, because the reason they are so pricey in the first place is because the components are getting constantly hammered. I mean, they are putting 3-inch motors on something that weighs the same as a 5-inch freestyle model, so everything is working overtime. In a hover, they're already drawing 20 amps, and on a punch out you're looking at about 65 amps. So would you trust a low-spec, no-name branded product with your $350 action camera in close proximity to people or property? This is the Analogue 4S version, but they also sell it as a 6S version and one with the DJI Air unit. So let's take a look at the specs. Its dry weight is 290 grams, and then with the GoPro it's 416 grams. The recommended battery is a 1300 milliamp 4S LiPo, giving an all-up weight of 580 grams. So it's 15 grams heavier than the Flywheel 138. And the reason I keep comparing these two is because the price is very similar, and I was extremely impressed with the Flywheel. The frame is constructed using carbon fiber plates held together using standoffs with foam padding surrounding the outside, and then some 3D printed material on the inside. There's also some 3D printed landing feet and other parts which I'll get onto later. The motors are iFlight's own Sing 1507 3300 kV, which are very reputable motors, but I think in this case I'd actually go for the 6S version because they are a 2800 kV motor, so it could still take a 4S LiPo, but it would be much quieter. The props are the HSKRC 3045s, which seem to be popular on these models due to the bullnose flat edge, and you're given a spare set of those in the package. What I do like about the BumbleBee is that the props are not elevated outside of the protectors, unlike the Flywheel, so it's safer. However, as a consequence, it doesn't fly as good. The stack consists of iFlight's own Success 32-bit 40-amp 4-in-1 ESC. It's got a built-in current meter which is very accurate, and it's also got a high-quality Rubicon low ESR capacitor attached to the battery terminals. The flight controller is an F4 compared to Flywheel's F7, however they've done more in terms of setup. For example, it's come flash with Betaflight version 4.1.1 and RPM filters was set up out of the box, although there are a couple of things that I had to change, such as adding D-Shot commands for a lost model alarm. And in the modes tab, angle mode is permanently enabled. Now, I know these guys aren't the best at doing acro, but if you're flying outside, then angle mode isn't going to get you good results. You get to Betaflight via an included 90-degree USB connector, but be careful with this because it came installed out of the box. Now, I like to give people the benefit of the doubt, but these 90-degree connectors very easily lift off the USB port on the flight controller because they're basically a lever. So the cynical side of me thinks that they come pre-installed so that if you make a mistake and the pads lift off the USB port, then they can always say, well, we pre-install them out of the box, so it's not our fault. Either way, be very careful with them and make sure that you remove it once everything is set up in Betaflight. This is the RXSR bind and fly version, but it's also available with a bunch of different receivers, so you can check the link in the video description to see the different options. I think they could have gone the extra mile with the RXSR and set up telemetry, but they haven't done that. The receiver sits in a 3D printed mount where you can easily access the bind button, and they also give you some antenna straws, but they're really short and tight fitting, and as you can see, I've lost one in the air. The VTX is power switchable via the TRAMP protocol up to 500 milliwatt, and it uses an MMCX to SMA pigtail for the included stubby antenna. Personally, I think a longer antenna would have been better because the LiPo is top mounted, which will block the signal when the model is facing towards you. The FPV camera is the Cadex Ratal, which is regarded as one of the best analog FPV cameras out there. I was a little worried how they had mounted it in TPU, as usually this causes giallo from vibrations, but that wasn't the case. You're given the camera controller board, but its extension cable isn't connected to the camera. I think you could get it in there from the underneath though, unlike the Flywoo 138, which you would have had to have taken apart. Either way, the camera was set up how I like it in PAL with a 4:3 aspect ratio, so I left the settings the same. An important thing to mention is that the GoPro mount doesn't actually come with the package. You have to buy it separately, which seems daft to me, seeing as this is the whole point of these type of models. And it's listed to fit a GoPro Hero 5 to 8. However, the GoPro 8 is a slightly different shape and size to the other models, so it only actually properly fits the GoPro 8. Oddly, you are given a TPU 3D printed mount for a crossfire antenna, even though this is the RXSR bind and fly version. I'd much rather them give you the GoPro mount instead. You're also given a anti-slip LiPo mat and a spare battery strap. Then they've provided some sticky back copper strips. Now, as you will see in the flight, I was getting a little bit of noise feeding through to the video feed. I wonder if the pigtail being in close proximity to the power leads is causing that. But there's no instructions where to install them, and for this price, that's something that you shouldn't have to do yourself. You do get given a bunch of spare screws, which I like, and some stickers if you're into that sort of thing. So I'm going to conclude what I think about this guy now, and then show you some line of sight and FPV footage. First of all, I think it's safer than the Flywoo 138 because the props are contained in the protectors. However, it really struggles to do flips and rolls in acro mode. Now, you could argue that these models aren't meant for that, and if that's your preference, then maybe this one is for you. What's kind of amusing is that Hypersmooth version 2 is so good that the GoPro footage makes the model look like it does acro quite well. But when you compare the DVR and the sound that the Hero 8 records, you will see or hear that it's struggling. It's louder than the Flywoo due to the higher kV motors, which also results in more voltage sag. It doesn't come with an action camera mount, and for the price, and especially for what these models are designed for, that is quite a big flaw in my opinion. It uses an F4 flight controller and not an F7, so for me the Flywoo 138 would be my personal choice against this one, and yes, I will be reviewing the Green Hornet. Okay, let's go for a line of sight with this guy. Oh my goodness. These things are so noisy. So just in angle mode, and really I'm just doing this line of sight to see if we can hear any oscillations and stuff like that. These things aren't built for power. But this one's actually got quite a bit of power, but oh, it's struggling on the descent. Okay, let's see if I dare go into acro mode. Yeah, it does a roll. And also a flip. The thing is, it's pretty calm today. Tried to do a power loop with the thing. It's pretty calm today, so you can never tell whether it's going to be able to do acro FPV, because when I'm just flying it like this, it's flying in a hover. So when you start to run into problems is when you're moving forward and you do acro, or when you're at a height, or when you do a big dive. And when it did that dive just then from the punch out, it was really sketchy on the way down. So I don't think this is going to be an acro machine, but they're not meant to be. So noisy. Can you hear me? Well, anyways, seems fairly safe, so have to see how it flies FPV, but I don't think I'd fly this thing in the house. I mean, it's antisocial outside. I'm worried about flying it out here. But in the house, it's so noisy. You'd have to have a fairly big space for something like this. And people use them to make adverts and stuff. And they've got these bumpers on them so that they don't hit into people. But I tell you what, you still have to be fairly brave to let one of these things go close to you, I tell you. Well, let's see how it flies FPV.